San Francisco-based Nepali American entrepreneur and the founder and CEO of SecurityPal, a company redefining enterprise security assurance through AI and human expertise. He's a Stanford graduate and Silicon Valley entrepreneur for nearly 2 decades. He has built SecurityPal into one of the fastest growing platforms in the space, and he's trusted by companies like OpenAI, Figma, and Snapchat. And he's also backed by Kraft Ventures. His company processes 1.5 billion enterprise contract value monthly, helping more than 300 organizations turn compliance from a growing bottleneck into a competitive advantage. Boy, am I really excited to have Pukar on the call today, on the show today. He has a lot of insight into an area that I am fascinated by because I had to deal with it in so many big, large organizations. Pukar, great to have you today.
Thank you so much, Joshua. Really excited to chat with you, and thank you so much for thinking of us and thinking of me here for this.
Yeah, so cybersecurity in the Himalayas. That's fascinating title. You have a great story, and just when we had met on the screening call, there was a good background on what Security Pal is. What do you do? But what is your story? What is your kind of your background?
Well, listen, I didn't grow when I grew up. I didn't even know much about cybersecurity. I doubt, becoming a cybersecurity CEO was certainly not like part of the goal, right? Like, and I really discovered this field, I would say, at my last company. We were at my previous startup that I was a co-founder of here in San Francisco. We were really close to closing like a deal. It was literally like the 11th hour. It was the end of the quarter. We're waiting for the DocuSign, frantically refreshing it on our Gmail accounts, and what we thought was a DocuSign instead was like a security questionnaire, this third-party risk management audit that we needed to be a part of, and we couldn't figure it out. We lost the deal. That company eventually died for lots of reasons. But one of the things we struggled to figure out was, how do we prove our security posture to large enterprises, and how do we actually do that in a way that wins trust, that wins credibility, so that they're not just using us for a pilot, but they're actually committing to a much longer term engagement. And that was really the spark that led me to start SecurityPal back in March of 2020. And with a handful of early customers, including, Airtable, Figma, and a lot of these really fast growing companies at that time. What we were doing is we were helping companies, process security questionnaires really quickly. So they had a security posture. They needed to respond to enterprise demands for security to comply and meet the demands of enterprise TPRM processes. And we were there, transforming processes and workflows that was taking months for some of these companies to do. It was literally, Joshua, taking companies, they would get the commitment from the enterprise to buy their product, but it was taking them 60 days to turn around a security questionnaire. Could you
Yeah.
imagine? That's 60 days of revenue that you're not booking. And so, we were able to turn that, bring that down to 24 hours, 12 hours, 6 hours now. We even do like under 1 hour turnarounds on security questionnaires. And that was our wedge. Eventually, we took that technology and we pointed it at the flip side. We had those same customers come back to us saying, "Hey, you guys have done such a good job of helping us turn around our questionnaires when our customers ask us. Can you do the same thing? Can you help us with our vendors? Our vendors take forever to respond to our demands for questionnaires." So we built out that vendor assess side of the business, and now it's all agentic, right? Our questionnaire concierge service is called Quincy. Our vendor assess service is called Vinny. You could change the names if you want to, but these sort of alliterative. It's easy to remember. Vinny for vendor assess, Quincy for questionnaire
Right.
concierge. We've got a knowledge library management system, Libby. And so we built these like agentic workflows. And then under the hood, it's powered by obviously all these cutting edge models. But a little sort of secret sauce for us is we've got a team of 200 people that are literally, 100 miles away from the top of Mount Everest in Kathmandu. And so our headquarters is in San Francisco. We've got an office in New York, but we also have this large team that operates 24/7, working with customers all the way from Japan to New Zealand to EMEA, and of course the vast majority of our customers are in the U.S. And we serve customers across all types of top AI companies in the world. OpenAI, Supabase, LangChain, to name a few of some of the most prominent ones. But we also have a top, airliner, a top, health insurer, top credit
So
card
yeah,
company and travel provider, a top financial services companies and stuff. And so I think the traction that we've had is is really a testament of our customers like trusting us for this. But what started out as a person found a way to jujitsu that into this business, and really in many ways try to also leverage that into discovering this hidden talent pool in Kathmandu. My connection to Kathmandu is actually, I was born in Kathmandu. I grew up in Nepal till I was about 7, and then I immigrated to the U.S. So I had the opportunity to come to this great country. I think the greatest country. And one thing I realized as I was scaling my business is I was looking for pockets of talent that were undervalued. And lots of people were talking about, Eastern Europe and India and Philippines. But it turns out there's so many incredible companies that were secretly setting up shop in Kathmandu. They had 14 U.S. publicly traded companies that had operations there, and lots of
Mhm.
startups already sort of like thinking about it. And it was the folks that were in Kathmandu were some of the top ethical hackers. They were winning bounties from Apple and MongoDB and Electronic Arts and all these like Fortune 500 companies. They actually ranked second in 2024 for the Facebook Bug Bounty Program, in between the US and India.
So real
And
talent
so,
over there.
yeah, so real undervalued talent. One of the sort of like folks I sort of look to is this famous investor called Peter Thiel, and he always talks about you want to
Mm.
find underappreciated, undervalued pockets of talent. And I feel like we sort of
Yeah.
found that in Kathmandu.
Well, that and the problem you solve is fascinating because I've been dealt with security questionnaires my entire career, and it was nauseum for third-party management programs.
Right.
And the fact that you're able to find a solution and really grab one thing you were talking about, there was many different questionnaires. This is one of the things the Bids Council on the financial services side wanted to try and solve. It was like between the banks from Wells Fargo to Bank of America and all, if we just had all the questionnaires the same, they all asked the same questions. They all had the same responses. And there was a big committee got put together for it. They put standards together. It wasn't a problem creating a standard for it. It's a problem just getting everybody to adopt it. And I think a lot of cases, your software solves that in many cases. How do you do the questionnaires? You and I were talking about how to do it at scale, how to actually,
Yeah.
when you respond to the questionnaires, be accurate and be truthful and have the legal consequence behind it. But tell me how you're solving that problem for what's kind of some of the efficiencies. Like I know at Wells Fargo, and other places, it was a true burden on the staff.
I'll tell you the type of scale we have. So, we've talked to a couple of companies that do in their totality of the year. Some of these companies will do 1,000 questionnaires a year. Now think about that for a second. Think about 1,000 questionnaires, security questionnaires a year. That means 1,000 enterprises are sending you security questionnaires, each of them hundreds of questions. You know, every week that's 20, right? That's 20 questionnaires a week. That is 5 businesses. Imagine getting 4 questionnaires a day, all right, that you got to fill out. I mean, this is like some of the scale of some of our customers. I'll tell you, Joshua,
Mhm.
we do 1,000 questionnaires. For this company, they get that volume in a year. We process that in a matter of hours,
Mhm.
right? And so, like, that's the type of scale we're talking about. And, we processed over 3 million questions to date. There's not many questions that surprise us. We've done it from almost our customers are incredible. They sell to most of the Fortune 500, Global 2000, all these companies, federal government, military, foreign governments. So we've seen questionnaires of all different shapes and sizes. And one thing we've learned is there's really a pattern to this. And there's really a way to map out your knowledge library, which is powered by Libby, one of our agents, such that you could really rapidly organize the information about your security posture. It's just that you
Mhm.
can meet the demand of your customers that are like sending you these questionnaires and these assessments.
But
And then beyond that, what we do is we augment that with our human team because there's a set of questions that get asked today that, for example, like 30 years ago, nobody was asking questions about cloud security posture. That
yeah,
cloud wasn't a thing 30 years ago. And so now a lot of questions like 10 years ago, nobody was asking about AI agent security. 5 years ago, nobody was asking about AI agent security. And so as technology is evolving, there's more interesting and more novel questions to ask to
yeah.
understand the security posture of companies. And what we're doing is we're helping our customers see around corners. We're actually designing the questions that a lot of companies are now asking to their vendors. And we're helping customers prepare for those very same questions. So really what that does is like there's nothing that the customers that work with us, there's very little that surprises them anymore because we're helping them understand, hey, this is what you need to be prepared for. These are the types of questions you need to be prepared for. These are the types of certifications you need to be prepared
Right.
for. And this is where the future is headed. And if you don't have good documentation around your security and GRC posture as it relates to these things, yes, it will fundamentally slow down deals. It will create a trust deficit in the relationship. It'll slow down adoption. And these are obviously things that we can't have because growth and revenue and this is all like top of mind for many leaders within companies. What I'm excited by is also become top of mind for CISOs, right?
Yeah.
CISOs are becoming really popular within organizations because it turns out security isn't just a sinkhole for your budget. It's actually an opportunity for you to close bigger and bigger deals.
One of the things I was excited about your solution, just the field there too, is that how you take questionnaires that always seem like a manual process, but really bring it into risk management focus, right? You were talking about when you would onboard a customer, you would ask them these questions related to their program, and that automates the filling out of the forms and so forth. I see it as a godsend because I want to be able to set policy and answer questions once, and then that will or propagate down to each of the different types of templates or questionnaires that are there, and be able to do it like you're solving it from rather than from a manpower perspective and just throwing a bunch of bodies at it and have somebody doing all these questionnaires. I like how it brings out the risk management portions of this as well. So
That's
I
right.
take it the risk management team is all excited about what y'all do as well.
And and I think there's a lot of data here. Listen, I mean, the types of questions that companies get asked today, it tells a lot. If you think about a questionnaire as like really a health check on the business
Mm.
in a couple of different ways, right? A lot of people complain, right? Like, how often are we going to have to answer, do we encrypt data at rest or in
Right.
transit? We know what the answers to those questions, right? Hey, we're based out of the cloud. It's AES 256. If it's anything outside of that, you should probably be concerned. And it's TLS 1.2 dot, N. Right now it's 3, but hopefully it's over 2. And so like these are these are the most common. People complain about getting questions that are like very the same sort of questions. Well, yeah, there's a set of questions that have a very structured response. There's a set of questions where the answer is just not going to change really for a long period of time. A perfect example of this is, we always tell companies, right? Your incorporation state, it's going to be Delaware. That's never going to change until the company dies or whatever, right? Unless you change like the jurisdiction. Your office address, maybe it changes every 3 years. Your cloud service provider, maybe it changes every 2 years, 3 years, who knows? Really, people don't migrate clouds. What ends up happening is they go multi cloud anyways, right? Your SaaS providers, maybe they're changing every year. People that have access to your production environment, that probably gets updated every quarter, right? You onboard new engineers, you're offboarding new engineers, right? And then there's like stuff that's below that. So it's having a good understanding of what are the questions where things are not likely to change and what are the
Right.
questions where things are likely to change. And that starts allowing you to like really map out what parts of your security posture are potentially more vulnerable as well, right? Because the things that are more likely to change are also the things in that transition where risk is introduced, right? You take a one engineer in the production environment, you add another, that actually momentarily increases risk. You've taken off
Yeah.
somebody that's trustworthy, you've added somebody else. Hopefully, you've ran through the necessary checks. Hopefully, they're on the need to know basis for being part of the production environment. But this is just one example. You onboard a new SaaS solution for, let's say, tracking logs or for doing authentication. That obviously introduces risk. And so I really look at every questionnaire as really a health check on the business. And how do we start building a real ledger for the security posture of the company and having a robust understanding of, hey, these are the areas where we don't really feel that comfortable right now, and these are the sort of like soft tissue in our business that is potentially vulnerable. And one thing we always try to tell our customers is, what questions do you have a little bit of discomfort around answering? Oh, because there's always every CISO has a set of questions that they don't want getting asked. Let's be honest.
It's the past breach stuff,
Well, yeah, it's the past breach stuff. It's the what keeps you up at night because right?
right?
Like the types of things that keep you up at night.
But they don't want to
And
say it.
they don't wanna say it, right? I mean, really, if ultimately, like, if the easiest way to kill our business model would be you connect 2 CISOs and the both of them just talk to each other about what keeps them up at night, and then if they're comfortable with that, and that would be like that would be but, you can't have conversations like that. It's hard, there's liability, there's risk involved and stuff like that, but, we facilitated those conversations in between CISOs as well. But like I said, there's things that keep every security organization up at night. They know the vulnerabilities. They understand like what parts of their business are not as secure as they need to be. And our job is to really allow them to have the ability to document that, to map those controls out, and then start showing value back to the business, being like, listen, these 5 questions we don't have good answers for, Mr. CFO, Miss CFO, right? Or Miss
Yeah.
CEO. We don't have good answers for them. And that's directly causing us to not win these deals. So we had a customer a couple of years ago, they had this incredible idea, which was like, hey, could you guys actually help us identify which questions we don't have good answers to and how much money is at stake? And so we did that, and now it's a core part of our product. So, for example, a good example of this is like we did an analysis on how many of your customers are asking you about BYOC, right? Bring your own cloud. How many of your customers are asking you about customer managed encryption keys, right? And so we were able to actually map out that there was like tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of ARR attached to those features. And guess what happened? Made it to the desk of the CTO and the chief product officer, ended up escalating those things in the roadmap. And now it's a core part of their product that they treat as an upsell. And so this is what I mean.
Mm.
Once you start looking at the data, you look at the answers to those questions, you look at the impact that it's having, then you can just have like a really facts-based conversation with the business about the reality that's on the ground. I think with most things in security and GRC, what ends up happening is conversations end up becoming overly emotional when they don't need to be, because the exciting thing about being a CISO and being a security leader is the facts are usually on your side.
Yeah, and I think there's a real solution here of being able to pull together what the right answers are for some of these questionnaires and then figuring out what are the gaps in your program. It's almost like you want to have one audit type language that's going out in the questionnaires because it's going to a third party. You don't want to say too much, but at the same time, the data that's collected from that should have an internal version that says, "Hey, these 3, 4 things, if added to your security roadmap, would solve some of these problems that you were just talking about." So it sounds like it's definitely a deal generator and allows you to be able to surface client issues.
100%. And I think like the stronger your security, the faster you're gonna go through the approval process. Listen, on the Vinny side, one of the things we've done is um, we've tried to fast track customers and their ability to like approve vendors, right? And so there are things that we look for that can like fast track this. If we know that a customer has been through FedRAMP High, we know how hard it is to get some of those designations and the
Right.
liability and the sort of like everything, all the risk attached to not doing that the right way, and how easy it is, by the way, to lose one of those things. I'll give you a fun story. We ride a Waymo here, and and one day I got into a Waymo and I actually saw an ID badge that was left behind in the car. And it was somebody that worked at one of the big companies. We're talking about a hyperscaler. And I looked, and they're a security engineer on LinkedIn. You know, that could have ended their FedRAMP, like designation, because I could have just
Right.
gone into the building and so just an example to show you like how sensitive these things are. And so when we try to assess the security posture, that's the first place we go. We say, hey, listen, yes, they've done their pen test, they've done all these things, but there's even better, higher, bar designation they've gotten. They've gotten FedRAMP High. And here's what all of this means. So, and for the use case that you're doing, it's actually low to medium risk. It's not high risk. Let's fast track them, right? And that's something that our AI can do within seconds, right? And so something that might have taken, there's companies that were literally spending thousands of dollars with a big four trying to get to the same conclusion in 4 weeks that we were able to drive towards in a matter of seconds, minutes, because we were taking a very thoughtful and risk-based approach to answering their question. And so these are just examples of how we like to approach some of these problems with our customers.
And I like the fact that it could be used in multi-dimension here. Let's just say you have normal third-party risk management, but what's to say you don't have like a new product line? Let's say Wells Fargo is going to launch some new product line and use 3 or 4 different vendors in the process. You can see using that as almost a first level data collection for an audit and being able to handle some of these questionnaires back and forth, and then the changes related to it. I'm assuming that the change is happening back and forth. So it's not a static answer to some of these questions.
It's
Maybe
it's not
80% of it is static, right? About
right.
20% is interpreted through the AI model.
Yeah, exactly. And with the additional data, right? The thing that we got to understand is, every company has a security posture markers. In many ways, if you think about it, companies are kind of like people, kind of like organisms, right? Their complexity grows over time, right? If I was to study your biomarkers from 20 years ago to today, they're not going to be the same, right? And so it's the same thing with a company. A company in year two is not going to be the same, not going to have the same sort of like security posture markers as a company in year seven. Even a company that's hype in like growing really quickly, they're gonna have a different security posture, at the end of the year than at the beginning. But it's about understanding where does that information live. So that usually it ends up living in the minds of people, right? So there's people in the organization that are part of the security posture, tools and systems, the cloud service provider and the configuration that they've set up their AWS instance, GCP, Azure, whatever it is. And then, of course, the third-party SaaS tools that they're using, right? And so all of these components that feed into actually defining a security posture, those things are changing over time. One of the failures of questionnaires is really the fact that yes, they're a necessary evil. We got to do them. A lot of people think questionnaires are going to go away. I don't think so, because the reality is it's not security leaders and engineers that make laws in Washington, unfortunately. It's it's lawyers. And as long as it's lawyers that are writing most of the rule books, we're just never gonna just
Right.
we're fighting a 100-year battle here. So like so these things are not gonna go away. And insurance companies are not gonna want them to go away, lawyers are not gonna want them to go away. And the big four, the guys that spend billions of dollars lobbying
Don't
Congress,
want to go away.
yeah, they definitely don't want it to go away because this is a massive cash cow. So what's going to happen? These questionnaires are only going to get longer. They're only going to get more complex. But what we say is questionnaires are necessary. And listen, you're going to need to do them. There are a representation of your security posture at that point in time. But let's not let a crisis go to waste. Let's not let this nuisance get in the way of us understanding where are the gaps, where are the faults, what are the things that are actually changing in a company, and assessing them and figuring out whether that has increased the risk or decreased the risk. So yeah, so when we work with our customers, we map out their security posture. We try to answer a super set of questions that we believe that they're likely to get. And then what we end up doing is we end up monitoring all the different buckets of knowledge, whether that's people, whether that's tools, systems, all of that, to make sure we can generate the right question, the right answer at the right time.
No, that's great. I definitely don't think they're going away.
They're not going.
Too many people think that, and I don't. You have too many businesses at different level of maturity. Everyone could create a questionnaire with some questions. They want to answer something, but regardless of their immaturity, there's going to be questionnaires. I thought for the longest time the whole check your bank account through the phone dial up would go away. But no, with seniors and everyone else who's a certain age group, they want to check their balance via the phone. Well, the banking systems have to keep these older systems up because it's backward compatibility, stuff like that. So I definitely think the questionnaires are an important part of a defense in depth. Actually, it seems like the first part of on a defense in depth because it's no longer just the inside of your network you have to worry about. You have third parties and even fourth parties that are coming off of those third parties that are creating tremendous risk. And the overhead of the program, like the third party risk management programs, are just tremendous. The value that you get out of filling out all those questionnaires constantly, it's not there. And everybody wishes, hey, how do I take that information and roll that up? And that is a holistic view of our risk. And this is what we do forward, and this is our response. But seeing you actually solve that, that was the big problem you were sitting in the middle of. But it also seems to give you access to data you didn't know or really anticipate before. Well, it's telling you security postures, it's telling you what kind of probably controls are missing, whether you have EDR, if you have antivirus in place. It just seems like it flushes out a lot of other needs for different people.
Totally. And listen, I mean, I always tell CISOs, right? Do not let this opportunity to repeatedly show the business where your shortcomings are from a security standpoint go to waste. I mean, there's nothing more powerful than a customer, than enterprises coming to you every month telling you you've got gaps in your security posture and it's going to lead to 2 to 3 weeks more of explanation before the deal closes, right?
Mhm.
Because, you tell the CEO once, hey, we've got a Fortune 500 that needs us to close these loopholes, close these gaps. They need us to go after ISO 42001, or they
Yeah.
need us to go after ISO 27000, or they need us to do pen test, our true environments, whatever it is, right? Do not let that go to waste. Like make
Yeah.
sure you document it well. This is some of the things we're helping our customers do, which is just like, listen, you had 10 enterprises asking you about these things, and it took you, you know, 20 days to respond to these findings. That's untenable. You're just not gonna your competitors are gonna be much better positioned to position their their products in these enterprises faster than you are. And so, and this is I think the best CISOs, I think we're lucky to be working with the security leaders we do, because they see that, they
Mhm.
understand that. They're very strategic, by the way. I think it's really necessary for CISOs today to be highly strategic in their thinking. I always say, like, do not miss the opportunity to leverage these things to improve the security posture of your organization, and take
Yeah.
credit for it as well. Why security leaders get hired.
It's such a business impact as
Yep.
well. I definitely see it as a business impact area of it. And I think one of the problems I used to have is that they would say, I don't know, don't tell the customer that or put this in here. And then later on, you would see the contract come back. I was with Booz Allen Hamilton. And when I was with that consulting company, we were really big on transformations, taking one company, combining it with another. They did a lot
Yeah.
of mergers and acquisitions. And we had one questionnaire filled out from one of the companies we were doing this for. That there was two companies that were merging. And the questionnaire asked, did you have enterprise detection and response? You have endpoint detection and response, EDR, on your desktops? Are you ability to detect and respond to cyber threats? Yes, that was a response. Went through legal day one, and the we are now in charge of both sides of the network now, because we're now in legal day one. And no, they didn't have the right licensing for CrowdStrike at all. They couldn't contain anything. And so we asked, wait a minute, you said in the questionnaire, it said that when you had threats, you would quarantine machines using, the EDR product, which was CrowdStrike. And he says, yeah, but we've never had an alert go off before, and we've never had to use it to actually quarantine a machine. So we didn't actually buy the license. We found out legal day one when a threat appeared. There was an incident and it was coming across. And of course, during a merger and acquisition, there's a lot of news, and that's when the attackers are sending notices out. This used to happen at Whitney Bank. They would send notices out and say, you got to update your security certificate, or you're going to lose access to your bank account. And it's all part of fear, right? And I think what'll happen too is a lot of that, and you're going to know a lot of that is changing here, and you're going to know how do you address that with the proper risk controls and so forth. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally makes sense. And listen, I think like
Like, how
there's a
would I
lot of.
detect that? How would I have known he just lied on the questionnaire,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
I think, listen, there's that famous saying, right? Like, more lies are told in Excel than or there's more lies are told in PowerPoint than are told in Excel is a famous
Yeah,
quote. And I'd say, and the most lies are told in security questionnaires. Listen, people, and maybe they're not intentionally lying and stuff like that. I think the reality is, when it comes to the role of a security questionnaire, one of the things that you really have to think about is, it's the company you're doing business with putting you on the record in case something goes wrong, right? They want a ledger. They want somewhere where you've said something that may not be true and stuff like that, because that's a CYA moment, right? It can allow them to say, listen, they didn't have this, but they said they had it. It's not our fault. It's these guys. They lied. Let's go after them, right? So that's one way. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. There's been very famous cases of it, right? One of the top publicly traded cybersecurity companies um was sued by a top airliner, for something that happened. But, you know, part of the investigation was also the stuff that they had heard about their SDLC policies and stuff like that. That certainly came into under scrutiny as well. In terms of verifying a company's security posture, there's only certain ways in which you can verify it. One, the way to really do this is you want to have multiple people at the organization sign off on things. That's one way to do it. So effectively, what you're doing is you can't just have a salesperson respond to a security questionnaire. They're
distributing
gonna say,
accountability.
yeah. And so you're distributing accountability, and somewhere along the way, what's gonna happen is someone's gonna be like, "Well, we don't have that. That's not true." Right? And so that's one. Two, the way you can do this is you can also ask people to attach their logs, right? Attach their admin panel, right? I know these are screenshots and stuff like that, but again, it's further evidence that puts that company on the record, right? And the other thing you can do is you can get on a live call and actually walk through, read only version of their controls, right? So hey, like, log in, show me that you actually have this done and stuff like that. The other thing obviously is you want to rely on the third parties that actually audited them, right? Where's the proof of that? You can ask them to share their various reports. Now I know SOC 2 won't always catch this, right? But there are other ways to, like, really, really catch stuff like this in terms of whether they've done, like, proper, penetration testing and stuff like that. Ultimately, this is gonna be tough, because the amount of information that you want from that vendor, like this is the classic case of incentives, Joshua. I got in front of a room of 50 CISOs of some of the top Fortune 500 companies. I asked them two questions, okay? I said, "Hey, how many of you in real time want to continuously monitor your vendors?" Every single hand went up. And then I flipped the question. I said, "How many of you want to be continuously monitored by your customers?" None of the hands went up. So everybody wants to continuously monitor their vendors, but nobody wants to be continuously monitored by their customers. And that is ultimately like one of the big challenges here of the amount of information that we're willing to give about our own security posture is much lower than what we seek from our vendors. But if that vendor really matters to you, if it's really important, you can't just rely on a questionnaire. You have to look for these additional buckets of information, which is multi-threaded accountability, real evidence of posture control, real third-party attested, whether be it FedRAMP or be it whatever it is, third-party attested reports about the security posture, and really really tight language. That's the way in which you do that. And obviously, like if you want to be in a world where you are able to continuously monitor the XDR controls or the EDR controls of that vendor, I mean, those are possibilities as well, but only in the rarest of cases will companies actually give you that level of control, you know? Yeah, I've seen this happen, but you really have to be spending a lot of money with a company for them to be willing to give you that level of access is what
Right.
I've generally found.
Well, tell me this. When does a questionnaire become a risk assessment?
Well, I would say some people would say every time you get a questionnaire, in some ways, it's a risk assessment.
And of data for a risk assessment on the back end. So are you doing that on the back end? Essentially, it's not just the questionnaire management and response, but you really could turn that into risk management across like a whole third party management program. Huh?
Yes, yes, you could. I would say every questionnaire has information about your security posture, and information about your security posture directly feeds into your risk management programs. I would say often we sit below the risk management programs. Like the
Mhm,
information is in the risk management tools and the risk management modules, and we're really reading it for the purposes of getting to the right answer for the questionnaire.
mhm.
But yeah, occasionally, like what we discover on a questionnaire, what we answer on a questionnaire can feed upstream to risk management, especially if the questionnaire has questions that the risk management program does not account for, right? And this is what I mean by all of these AI related questions, model security, AI agent security, because a lot of risk management programs, traditional risk management programs, do not have those questions baked into their modules.
So now that's a good point. So now they're asking all these vendor questions about your AI model, how was it tested, all that kind of stuff. And you now have to answer those in the questionnaires. That's interesting. What
Yeah.
else are you seeing change in the landscape right now?
Well, I think one thing that's becoming pretty interesting because we do both sides. We help companies process questionnaires and assessments. We also help so ones that they get from their customers, but we're also assessing vendors. We assess vendors and their security posture. One thing we're noticing a lot of companies using AI to respond to questionnaires, and nobody's reading these answers. I mean, these answers are just making up stuff,
Mm,
because they're relying on AI to respond to questionnaires. So they think, oh, I got a questionnaire, I'm just going to use AI to respond to it.
mm.
But people are listing tools that just don't exist.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they do that. I had it where it kind of hallucinated on me. I said, "Look, take my resume, CISO base, incident response person. I want you to take it. I want to take my architecture skills and just kind of highlight that." Instead, it completely made it up. Made up products, made up time, made up service names, made up employment dates, made everything up.
Right. And listen, I think the hallucination problem has reduced drastically, but the reality is these questionnaires are really important. And so even if there's one error in 100 questions, if that ends up hitting a question that's really critical and you can't really backtrack or walk away from that answer, that's going to be a problem. And so like these are these are the things to really consider. And so we're seeing a lot of questionnaires where on the TPRM side, when we're helping companies assess their third party risk management programs,
Mm,
by golly, I mean some of the stuff that we read is just like concerning. You know, first of all, you can easily tell because half the answers have like M dashes, and that's a sort of like big tell that a lot of people are using AI and stuff like that. But
mm,
there's also other things that are just like answers that just don't feel right, don't seem right, blatantly made up responses, like responses that would lead you to ask a lot of follow-ups. And so naturally we do. When we send an assessment to the vendors of our customers on their behalf and they send us back and clearly AI generated response, well, guess what happens? The scrutiny level goes up, not down. Because now we want to know where you got all of these answers from. And that elongates the decision making process about that vendor.
Then maybe your product should be called suspicion, where it looks at it and it gets suspicious. Like, I don't know, we're gonna invest and we're gonna start the suspicious module here because some of these answers aren't right. And I think that's important. It's not just managing the actual questions and the responses and saving it, but it's actually giving some context to see if that's a BS answer. Does it actually respond to it properly, or is it just some kind of filler word? So you're able to detect if it's kind of BS for some of these responses and have a contextual kickback. Is that what it happens? Or?
You can tell now. You can tell if there's a lot of these there's a lot of these like tools, and some people call them sophisticated. I don't think they're that sophisticated, but there's a lot of tools and APIs that you can use to figure out if something is AI written by AI or not. Because again, statistically, it's about next token prediction, and so you can tell how closely humans are much more random than machines.
Yeah.
And random, if I was to for example ask you to name 10 random numbers, you'll never repeat a single one, by the way, because you'll think it's random. But in the nature of random, you could have three twos in a row because it's truly random, you just don't know. So it turns out, like, in nature, random is much feels like it has more of a pattern than what humans believe random to be, if that makes sense.
It
And
does.
so those are some of the things that some of these AI detectors can use to figure out what's going on. What I'll tell you is a suspicion. We don't want to call ourselves suspicion pal or anything like that. We're in the business of security, and what I like to say is our customers pay us to help them overcome paranoia on the sell side, right? Because companies are paranoid about the vendors that they onboard, and so our job is to dispel paranoia for our customers and help them improve their security posture so they can close more deals as fast as possible and grow their business and serve more customers, increase GDP. That's what we like to say. And then on the flip side, we actually want our customers pay us to be paranoid. Andy Grove, one of my favorite business folks, he ran Intel for a long time. He says only the paranoid survive. And I think that's right. You really want to be paranoid about the vendors that you're onboarding, because the tools today, I'll tell you right now, the tools today, any of your employees are one click away from giving access to the entire kit in there, And then don't even get me started on vibe coding, because most people, when they vibe code, they're literally just clicking yes and allow and approve. Nobody's reading this code. One of the most dangerous things right now is we've taken a population that doesn't like to read and next to the number of texts and given them the allow button right next to it. It basically might as well be skip reading, just press play.
That's the
Right?
new generation. Look, and I'll tell you, one of the risks I had do intrusions a lot. We had an incident, and one of them is we had a vendor who was a critical third party application, and the client did not pay to have the infrastructure or the additional license in a restoration when a restore is necessary. So they got hit with ransomware and they needed to restore this application. And oops, you didn't pay, you don't have additional infrastructure for it. You didn't pay for the additional license for it. We're not even going to give you the license unless you pay $500,000. It was a huge price tag for this vendor. So I thought they were using it as leverage in this ransomware attack of saying, okay, well, you need to pay for this license for me to restore it. But to be honest, that happens a lot more than you would think, where someone thinks they need to restore from a ransomware attack, and then they don't A, have the infrastructure, B, don't have the right data for it, and C, have no idea what data sets to actually restore into it, what happened and where. So it gets to become a real mess. And you can almost see from a questionnaire with a third party, if there was a disaster, for instance, am I need to restore the entire database? Do you have the infrastructure in place to do that? Yes or no? If you don't, let me at least account for it in my BCP plan. If not, the fact I can't restore at all from it because I don't have a set of infrastructure or I don't have the capabilities to restore because of it. I've seen a number of customers just really be surprised about their backups.
Yeah, I'm 100%. You know, these type of challenges are incredibly common, especially when you're trying to roll back and trying to restore stuff. But this is also like what I mean by so much of what AI is doing right now. It's a far cry from these types of nitty gritty issues where the human has a lot of context about the relationships and the capabilities and stuff like that. It's going to be a little bit of time before the AI models can actually like figure this out. But this is where you need human and you need judgment. And how do we free us up to be able to do that more, right? Like responding to security questionnaires, trying to like gather information about a vendor where all the information can already be gathered by AI. Let's stop time. Let's stop wasting time doing that. And so I think we're going to end up hiring a lot more security folks that are just much more researcher types, much more technical. I think it's more important to build deep technical expertise now than ever before because those skills are going to go much further. And I think what you want is you really want experience, you want to hire experienced people. I think we're going to have a renaissance of experienced folks for a very simple reason, which is, I'm a little bit of a math nerd here, but I think experience is basically a higher y-intercept. You're higher up on the y-axis, and so if everybody has access to the same tools, they have access to the same slope. If you're higher up on the x-axis, you're always going to be higher as you go through time, right? Whereas, you with AI is going to be much more effective because you've got 20 years of experience at becoming applying AI to cybersecurity versus somebody that's maybe just 1 or 2 years out of school.
I said the
So
same thing with the incident response here. When you do incidents and somebody just came out of forensic school, but they weren't in IT for 15 years battling logons and network infrastructure issues. So yeah, sort of
right.
the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Just like knowing where to look and whatnot. And so experience is about, and I think the most important, sort of thing that I would sort of tell your listeners is it's really important now to figure out where do you want to spike? Where do you want to have a high Y-intercept?
Mm,
Do you want it to be is it on the red team side? Is it on the blue team side? Is it even in cybersecurity? Is it in governance, risk, and compliance? Is it in more sort of like customer assurance or, security assurance? Like where do you want your Y-intercept to
mm.
really take you because AI is, because that's going to be the thing that you're going to spend the majority of your time doing. It doesn't mean you can't learn something new from scratch, but I think it's more important now than ever to really figure out what is it that you really want to build your. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. Well, that's great. Well, Pukar, it was great to have you here, and I definitely want to encourage everybody to check out Security Pal AI. Right? Is that the website? SecurityPal.
You can go to securitypal.ai. You can go to securitypal.com, securitypalhq.com. We've sort of cornered all the different ways. The real domain is actually securitypalhq.com, but you can go to securitypal.com as well, and that'll take you right there.
Well, that's great. And then to know more about the Nepal area and the talent that was there, that was new to me. I didn't know, and it was so great to get informed of the talent and just to see how you're utilizing that to be able to expand your company and to branch out. That's exciting. That's
Yeah, there's a
awesome.
lot
Great
of
to hear.
they're calling it Silicon Peaks over there, so
Okay.
because of the Himalayas. So if people are interested, they can go to siliconpeaks.com as well to check out that ecosystem as it's being built out.
Well,
Well,
Pukar, it was great having you on the show, man. Great to talk to you. And for everybody else, I want to make sure you hit that like, comment, and subscribe. You got any questions for Pukar, I'll make sure to pass that on to him. But everybody stay secure, and I will talk to you on the next show.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Cybersecurity America.